Parliament.
Let's stay with Parliament and yesterday's decision for a constitutional review to allow for land expropriation without compensation. 241 MPs voted in favour of the motion, while 83 opposed it. The ANC insists land reform will not threaten food security or the economy. Let's get more clarity on this with Deputy Minister of Rural Development and Land Reform, Mcebisi Skwatsha. Minister, thank you so much for your time on the programme this evening. How do you intend to go about expropriating land without compensation, without damaging food security or the economy?
Thank you very much, ma'am. Thanks to your viewers at home. Yesterday we passed this particular resolution, and what we definitely did say is that it should be taken to a constitutional review, and we then get a report back in August. The fact is, we want to do everything that we do in a lawful manner. We want to check all kinds of modalities, and we want to make sure that land is expropriated without compensation, but in a way that will in fact enhance food production rather than hampering or harming food production.
So my understanding is that you as government have no compulsion to actually monitor land usage after you've restored it. So how can you guarantee food security, Deputy Minister?
Look, as the department, in fact, we have been trying to improve and sharpen in that regard, because the issue of giving back land to us is not a matter that starts now. We have been restituting land for some years now. And we have had a particular weakness in this regard, that some of the land we did restitute has been lying fallow. But in the last year or so, we've been making follow-ups in that regard and making sure that there is no land that is not used productively. So in the regard of this particular important aspect, whose decision we have now taken, one of our responsibilities would also be to sharpen our tools to make sure that no land does lie fallow. But in this regard, we don't think that it is only a government responsibility to make sure that things do go right and there is food security. This is why we're calling on all South Africans, and especially important stakeholders, to go and walk with us in this uneasy road. But all we are busy about is trying to redress the imbalances of the past. We know that it's not going to be easy. It's a thorny road, but it's a road worth taking.
Deputy Minister, I'm looking at an aspect of Section 25, which is the aspect of the Constitution you wish to amend as a party, and it specifies that land can be expropriated in terms of a law of general application. It specifically speaks about for a public purpose or in the public interest, and it says it's subject to compensation, the amount of which and the time and manner of payment of which have either been agreed to by those affected or decided or approved by a court. So what it does suggest is that if we're talking about public interest, we're talking about the nation's commitment to land reform, to bringing about equitable redress. Why do you need to change the law when it seems there in Section 25, right before you, you have exactly the tools to be able to carry it out? It's simply the implementation that you haven't been able to achieve in the last 20-odd years.
You see, the ruling party took a decision in its conference in December to expropriate land without compensation. But having taken that decision, it followed that decision with a decision that says, let us go into a summit workshop in March with various stakeholders, where we will look particularly at the constitutional provision and look into how we make sure that we enhance that constitutional provision. It's not a decision that says we are now going to be amending the Constitution. We are going to be looking in March whether this is sufficient, but we also want to make sure that we sharpen our tools, as I am trying to emphasize. Look at the provision that you have just quoted now, but look at the teething problems that we have been encountering since the Constitution has been adopted, and the teething problems are various.
Deputy Minister, I'm questioning your decision as a party to even review this section. What I'm saying to you is that the tools have already existed in the Constitution for a number of years, but the way your government has applied them appears to have been completely inadequate, and it displays a lack of will to restitute the land the way it should have.
You see, if you say there has been a lack of will, it's a non-appreciation of the complexity of the problem that has been encountered over hundreds of years. There are various complexities. Complexities also include some weakness on the part of our own department, but also weaknesses in relation to various stakeholders, including those people who own particular tracts of lands, but also including those that ought to benefit. This is why we have reached a stage where we have to make an assessment of how far we are and what more we can do to enhance this process of land getting to our people in the form of redressing the imbalances of the past. Yes, Section 25 does give us that particular option, but there is also a strong view that says it does limit to a particular extent. Now we are going to this particular meeting in March to look at such modalities, but what we are emphasizing, we want to do everything that we do without doing land grabs, without making sure that we harm the economy, but making sure that we enhance our situation in the country.
We know government has already handed over some farms to beneficiaries. The Democratic Alliance now saying there are 4,000 farms which government should have handed over, but that still hasn't happened. Can you confirm the accuracy or inaccuracy of that?
I cannot confirm the accuracy of that number. If we have farms that have to be handed over, we make the necessary provision for them to be handed over. What sometimes do happen is that having handed over those farms, production does not immediately kick in, precisely because when we hand over farms, it cannot be assumed that the new owners of the farms are people who can be able to productively use. We have set mechanisms in the department. This is why we often employ strategic partners to assist the people who have newly acquired the farms to make sure that those farms are productive.
Minister, how are you going to deal with the issue of the Ingonyama Trust? I mean, this is quite a controversial one. A government panel advises you that that land must be returned to your particular department. On the other hand, you've got King Goodwill Zwelithini calling out for his subjects to hang on to that land with both hands.
We are a caring government. We know that the land issue is an emotive issue. We want to tread with caution, but treading with caution does not mean that we should not bring equality to the country. Now, on the issue of the ingonyama Trust, it has its own history. We know how it came about. We want to have a discussion with all South Africans. We have now received the high-level report on this particular issue. We would engage even the king of the Zulus and every other stakeholder. Everything that we do, we want to make sure that we don't do it by force. We take South Africans along, including the king, but ultimately, we want to make sure that equity does prevail in our country.
Thank you so much for talking to us. Deputy Minister of Rural Development and Land Reform, Mcebisi Skwatsha, live to us from our Cape Town studios. Next up, we continue.